Did you know that you have to ovulate in order to make progesterone? Yep, that's true. A lot of women don't even realize that they're not ovulating or that their progesterone is low. Some women with PCOS know their progesterone is low because they've had it tested and they're not ovulating or they don't have enough progesterone. This is very common with women who have PCOS. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to ovulate better, and what to do to support our bodies so that they can make one of the most important hormones, progesterone. Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Jessica Ash, and I'm so excited that you're here. I love to educate you on all things metabolism and hormones so that you can understand your biology better and really see through all the BS advice in the diet industry and the health and wellness industry and take steps that are actually going to change your health for the better. In this video, we're going to talk all about progesterone because a lot of women are being told they have low progesterone, know they have low progesterone, are estrogen dominant, and so therefore they need more progesterone in their lives. But they don't really know how to go about making more progesterone or getting ovulating if they aren't ovulating. And because ovulation is really the only way that we make progesterone as women, it's important to work on ovulating every month so that we can make enough progesterone during that luteal phase to help us get those beneficial effects. You know, progesterone can be anti-inflammatory, it can be pro-metabolic and pro-metabolism. It helps, lower the effects of stress and really protect us from cortisol. It can help us get really deep sleep. It can also help relax us and make us feel really chill. It's almost like that chill hormone. And so a lot of women experience anxiety during the second half of their cycle because their progesterone is low. And so we want more of this hormone, and we want to be ovulating so we can make this hormone. Ovulation is so important for female hormones in general, but it's specifically important for the production of progesterone because we will not make progesterone if we are not ovulating, aside from the small amount that's made in the adrenals. So how does ovulation result in progesterone? Well, when women ovulate, which is usually around the middle of the cycle, a lot of people say day 14, but women can ovulate at different days of their cycle. Every woman's a little different. When we ovulate, we drop an egg to possibly become fertilized. But the emptied egg sac, or the place where the egg resided for all that time, becomes a gland called the corpus luteum. And the corpus luteum rapidly develops within 24 hours and starts producing us progesterone that lasts us our whole luteal phase, or is at least supposed to last us our whole luteal phase, which optimally should last between 11 and 14 days. And the corpus luteum either will disintegrate towards the end of that 11 to 14 day period and our progesterone levels will plummet and we will start our period again, or the corpus luteum will actually go on to sustain progesterone levels in the first 8 to 10 weeks of pregnancy until the placenta can take over and make progesterone all pregnancy long from there. So really, what determines our progesterone production is really the health of that corpus luteum. And because it's such a rapidly developing gland, because it grows so quickly, it requires a lot of nutrients. It is a part of the ovaries, and the ovaries themselves do require a lot of nutrients, but because it's such a rapidly developing gland, it does require specific nutrients, which we're gonna go over in this video. It also requires a lot of energy. It takes work to develop that quickly and then to produce progesterone. And so we have to remember that because this is an energy and nutrient intensive job, we can't really make progesterone out of thin air, even though a lot of us women expect our body to run on thin air. We don't, I'm sorry. So the goal is not just to ovulate, but to ovulate well. So we're making an abundance of progesterone, enough to become that dominant hormone from day 14 to 28, or the second half of our cycle, because progesterone is supposed to be the dominant hormone in that second half of the cycle, and it should be there to overpower estrogen and balance estrogen out. And a lot of problems begin to happen when we don't have progesterone there to balance estrogen out, and we become become estrogen dominant for the last half of our cycle, even though there's only one really point in our cycle right before ovulation where we're supposed to be estrogen dominant. So how do we know if we're ovulating? I think a lot of women ask that question, and there are a few signs we can look for in our body if we're looking carefully. And I highly recommend checking out the book Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Toni Weschler if you haven't already read that book. I kind of count it as like the Bible for females to learn about their cycle, whether they're trying to get pregnant or not trying to get pregnant, or just trying to understand their cycle and how their body works in general. Highly, highly recommend that book. But if you haven't heard of it already, it's called the Fertility Awareness Method. You're looking for the signs and signals of when your body is ovulating, so therefore you know when you are fertile. But there's so much more benefit to the Fertility Awareness Method than just knowing when you're fertile or not. It's about knowing your body, and it's about being able to know your body like the back of your hand. And so there are a few signs that you can use to track ovulation, including your body temperature, or your basal body temperature, your cervical position, and your cervical mucus. Now, a lot of women will use all three of these things combined to be able to track their ovulation and track when they're ovulating. It does take some consistency, and we can do a whole nother video on that soon. But the for sure way to know if you're ovulating or not is to test your progesterone levels 5 to 7 days after you supposedly or think you're ovulating. That's the way we can absolutely confirm if we ovulated or not, which is getting our progesterone tested. But because that can sometimes be expensive or invasive, we don't always have the means to test our progesterone 5 to 7 days after we ovulate. Sometimes we have to use what's available to us, like basal body thermometers, looking at our body's signs and signals, and of course looking at our body temperature and just our symptoms as a whole. If we're not sleeping well during our luteal phase, we're feeling very anxious, like we can't settle down, our blood sugar feels like it's out of control, our metabolism is kind of shot, we have a lot of estrogen dominant symptoms, then chances are we're probably not making enough progesterone. Now, that's not always the case, but it can be a really good sign that we need to do a little bit more digging. But for the women who are like, I'm not ovulating, or I'm not ovulating well, I'm low in progesterone, I wanna go over 4 things to be aware of when you're trying to get your body to make enough progesterone or ovulate again. These are 4 things that we have to be doing in order for our body to feel safe to reproduce. Because what it boils down to, if we're not ovulating or we're not ovulating well, our body's using resources for other things that it deems more important. And what does your body deem more important than reproduction? Survival. And so when our body is stuck in a survival mode, it's not really concerned with reproducing, but we want to get our body out of survival and into reproduction. So, we want to get our nervous system away from that fight or flight state and towards that rest and reproduce state. So the first step is to just eat enough calories. We need enough protein, enough carbs, and enough fat to fuel our cells. This includes the ovarian cells, right? This includes the cells that are involved in our reproductive system. This includes the cells that are producing hormones. And so a lot of women think this is just too simple, and they overlook the fact that if we're not fueling ourselves well, and we're not fueling ourselves regularly, and we're not fueling ourselves enough, a lot of times our bodies are not feeling safe, and the female body thrives on safety. Reproduction is an extra to the body. It requires extra energy, extra nutrients. And unfortunately, in the modern world today, there's so many demands being placed on our body, oftentimes it's going to the wayside. And we need to bring it back to the forefront so that the body knows it's safe to reproduce. And what better way to do that than to feed and nourish ourselves? Getting ourselves out of that state of famine and translating our body that there's an abundance of food is very, very important, because when our body is starving, oftentimes the thyroid and the adrenals are gonna pick up the slack, specifically the adrenals. And when those stress hormones are high, we're burning through nutrients very, very quickly. So when we're trying to get ovulation back, it is not the time to be skimping on the calories. It's not the time to be overly stressing our body with excessive amounts of exercise. And it's not a time to skimp on all those really valuable valuable nutrients that we need. There's no need to be cutting carbs or cutting proteins or cutting fats. Our body needs it all. Step 2 is actually, I think a lot of people just forget that this is important, but prioritize your sleep. Prioritizing sleep is really important because a lot of people are going to bed later and later and later. They're maybe waking up earlier. They're not really realizing that they're not getting the rest that their body needs. And the rest that the body often needs is very restful rest. So if you've ever had a non-restful night of sleep, you've woken up kind of tired or exhausted, or you don't really feel refreshed, that is not a restful night of sleep. That's a stressful night of sleep. We want to be prioritizing sleep, and we want to be prioritizing restful sleep. There's a big difference. And so we want to create a sleep routine that allows our body to recover and rejuvenate from the demands of the day. This paired with the first step, which is a nourishing diet that provides the body an abundance of nutrients, can be so powerful. So it's important to set a bedtime and kind of go to bed around the same time every day. It's important to try to limit our screen time before bed, not look at too many screens. Remember that light is information to the body, and if we're looking at tons of bright lights and we're looking at a lot of screens right before bed, it's telling the body that it's daytime, when in reality we want to be translating to the body it's nighttime, it's time to rest, it's time to rejuvenate. We also want to consider maybe not working out before bed. Remember, working out is very depleting to the body, and it can increase stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. This can sometimes be beneficial at the first half of the day, especially when we're fueled, but towards the evening we want those stress hormones to be as low as possible, and working out in the evening will oftentimes mess with sleep, especially if we're already struggling getting that restful sleep. And then another thing to remember before bed to really increase sleep and increase quality of sleep is eating a small snack before bed. In Fully Nourished, my online course, you'll find a whole lesson dedicated to the bedtime snack because it kind of is an art, and it's also an amazing tool to get a little bit of carbs and fat and protein before bed to keep blood sugar stable all night long. Because remember, when we're not consuming any fuel, our liver is going to be responsible for keeping our blood sugar balanced with the absence of fuel. After prioritizing sleep, I think the third thing that's very important is our light situation. We want to be getting enough sunlight during the day. The absence of sunlight and not getting enough sun is actually pretty stressful to the body. It can increase stress hormones, lower thyroid function, and also translate a few things to the body. So remember how I said light is information? Well, the body is very in tune with the rhythm of the sun and the moon, or light and darkness, or when it's day and when it's night. And our circadian rhythm, or our body's rhythm, will actually be in tune with the light or the sun. And so the shorter the days, or the more darkness there is and the less light, that translates to the body that it's winter time. And the longer the days, the more sun we're exposed to, that translates to the body that it's summertime. And we have to remember that during summer and winter, there are different availabilities of food. And, nowadays in the modern world, we have access to food all year round, but there was a time when winter automatically meant less food, and summer automatically meant more food. And remember how I said, a body that wants to reproduce is a body that's nourished, a body that has an abundance of nourishment available to it. Well, light can be a thing that communicates to the body those things. So a good rule of thumb is to get some sunlight every day in our eyes and on our skin. Even if it's just 20 or 30 minutes while we're on a walk outside, it can make a big difference for our hormones and also our ovulation. Our hormones are absolutely impacted by light, and if we're spending too much time indoors and we're not getting outside when the sun is out, that can make a large impact on our production of progesterone and even our ovulation. And then step 4 is we actually want to make sure we're getting an abundance of the nutrients we need to produce progesterone. So remember how we talked about the corpus luteum and how it's a rapidly developing gland? Well, that corpus luteum, that gland, actually has very specific nutrient requirements. It requires a lot of minerals like sodium, potassium, magnesium, zinc, copper, and iodine. It also requires vitamins like vitamin A and vitamin E. It requires antioxidants like vitamin C. So we want to make sure we're getting a very whole foods, nutrient-dense diet that's providing us enough energy as well as nutrients. So in the first step, we talked about getting plenty of calories and plenty of protein, carb, and fat. But we want to look a little deeper and see, where are we getting these calories from? Where are we getting this energy from? Because the more nutrient dense, the better. And so mineral-rich foods include animal foods such as like shellfish and fish and grass-fed beef. Dairy products are an amazing source of fat-soluble vitamins and minerals. Fruit is an amazing source of carbohydrates, but also minerals and nutrients. And those are things that we want to be really focusing in on. We also want to be getting those high quality saturated fats like ghee and tallow and grass-fed butter that are going to provide things like vitamin K and vitamin A. And so getting in a nutrient-dense diet that's not only providing us nutrients, but also providing us energy, and is also easy to take, break down, digest, and absorb and assimilate, will allow us to get those nutrients faster and therefore provide that to every single cell in our body, including the ovaries and including the corpus luteum that's making us progesterone. So the female body is always working towards ovulation. And if we aren't ovulating, we have to ask ourselves why. That doesn't mean our body is broken. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us. It just means that our body may not have the raw materials it needs to do what it's meant to do. And so we want to look towards nourishment first. We want to look towards those foundations that I teach in Fully Nourished and Mend Your Cycle, my online courses, because oftentimes those are being overlooked, and we're thinking like, what supplements should I take? And what crazy things do I need to do? When in reality, we need to first just make sure we're laying foundations. Are we getting good nutrition? Are we getting enough nutrition? Are we getting sun? Are we, resting? Are we getting some mindful movement? Are we getting the vitamins and minerals that we need? Once we've laid those foundations, that's an appropriate time to maybe talk about supplementation or adding in some extra tools that are going to get us to where we need to go. But of course, we're not getting to where we need to go if we're not just laying the foundational things that every cell in our body needs. If you want to learn more about nourishing your body for better hormonal health, check out my online courses, either Fully Nourished, which is my whole, full, complete blueprint to restoring the female metabolism using nutrition, or my mini course, Mend Your Cycle, which is a quick 90-minute course that offers 11 simple action steps to get started on your hormone balancing journey. Both these courses were created for kind of painting the big picture in regards to the metabolism and how the thyroid and your stress hormones and ovulation, aka progesterone and estrogen, all work together to kind of create this symphony and harmony in our bodies. And I love to teach you how to use nutrition and food to optimize the female body, so you stop feeling overwhelmed about food, you stop feeling like you have to restrict food, and you start looking at food as an opportunity to nourish yourself every single day, day in and day out. I'll see you in the next video.